Hello, everyone. This is Scott with another Saturday service. I'm going to stop dating these for a little while and I'm going to stop um, naming them by the cards and stick with a more narrative approach to see how this goes. Just a little guidance, just a little feeling that some of these messages and the feedback that I've received in some client sessions and conversations with people who have tuned in that it didn't matter when they were watching it, that some of the messages still applied to them. So I just felt like let's pull this out of a time frame and start saying like what's the story and what's the message here, and whenever you find it is when you find it, and that's what it means. um, Little wibbly wobbly timey wimey Doctor Who reference there, but I think you get what I mean in that sometimes we see these videos later, but the message still applies, and I just want to honor that feedback that I received this week. Welcome to an old altar picture that I did. I think this was for Witchcraft 1, or no, Witchcraft 2, and setting a light for some of those intentions. Um, we have a little bit of black and white action going on, and yeah. So where are we for the message for the week? This is what I want to say essentially. Um, Things are hard, but don't lose your heart. And I think that that's the most important message. And it's very easy there's a couple of pieces to this, but it's very easy as things um, become challenging in our lives in all the variety of ways that it can, for us to seek escape in the places where we can. And you know what? There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with having a good game, or there's nothing wrong with having a nice walk in the park, and there's nothing wrong with finding the space to tune out. We can't always be tuned into crisis. That's mentally impossible. Um, the erosion that occurs when we're in those spaces. Speaking from a place of privilege in the world that we live in, right? Like, because that's not true for everyone in the world when they don't have the option to tune out for some of these things. But something happens to us when we're constantly, re-traumatized by things, when we're constantly put into challenge, when we're constantly put into these sorts of spaces. So what I'd like to say is, regardless of where we're at or what's happening or what it is that we're facing, there's one key element that we all have that does not require crystals, stones, tools, special prayers, um, certain circumstances, the moon being in a sign, astrological seasons, or anything else, and that is the heart within our body. The heart within our body is a drumbeat that is continuing to the sound of our life, our pulse, our rhythm, which is connected to the earth, its life, its pulse, its rhythm, which is connected to the universe, its life, its pulse, its rhythm. And I believe that pulse and rhythm is love, because it may not be the love which we might romanticize, but it is the love that sustains life. It is the inherent nature of love that continues to beat, to thrive, um, and to fuel the bellows of our breaths and keep our bodies moving. It is that love that sustains us, and is that love that grows within us each day that keeps the body moving and the consciousness going. As I said, it's not necessarily the love that is the higher love, that we might speak of in poetry, um, or in story, but it is the love that exists, and I think that's often the love that's overlooked. We want the romanticized versions of things. We want things to be idealized in a way that's perfect, so that we feel perfect and that we mentally feel safe about where we're at or what we're doing, or that it's concluded in any sort of way. But the reality is that things are the way that they are, and your heart is still beating in them. And this challenges some of the concepts that we might have about what we want, which brings me to the second important lesson or message this week that I feel was really relevant uh, in some of the readings and things that I did, and not picking on anyone in particular, but recognizing that there are things that have happened in our lives. There are places that we went in the last year, or maybe even 6 months or 2 years, like it could be longer or shorter, where we felt drawn. There was a desire to go there. There was an intuition. There was a calling. I accidentally found myself in this position and I ended up doing this thing, which was off the beaten path or contrary to what I wanted, but this is where I found myself. And look at what what came of that. Look at the value of what happened, even though if it wasn't what you wanted. And I'm not in any way saying to sort of paint over any terrible things that happen. Gods know. I had plenty of those in this last year. But really, where did they carry you, right? So, classic example that I use this week is when I started Reiki. Reiki, very popular, continues to be very popular. It's grown a lot in the world and lots of variations and opinions and things about that. And everyone at this point, if you don't know what it is, probably has an opinion about it. And side quest, people are always like, oh, I had Reiki and it was horrible. And I'm like, I don't know what you had, but that wasn't Reiki. Come see me, because it shouldn't be that way at all. But I will digress. There was a point to that, but I'm happy to talk about it in another space and another time. But here's the thing, is my story is with Reiki is that it was an accident. I did not set out to become a Reiki practitioner. It was 1994. Um, so it was 31 years ago. Yeah. Uh, and um, and I had met someone by the name of Claudia McGregor, and her partner Cheryl Coleman, and they came to an art gallery slash metaphysical space that I owned with a friend. It was her shop, and I had ownership in it as I was helping to sort of make it happen. And lovely Claudia came, and she had been in another occult bookstore that I was working at called Mystic Gems in Newark, California. And we had met there. And when we opened this new art gallery metaphysical center when Mystic Gems had closed, we reached out to Claudia and said, hey, do you want to come do some of your things here? And I think originally it might have been asking her if she wanted to do her handwriting analysis and hypnotherapy combinations that she used with her clients. And she said, we'd really like to talk about Reiki. And so she and her partner came and they did a demonstration on Reiki. We had a fair number of people sign up for that, and no one showed up, which was strange because um, at the time it was prior to the internet being what it is now. So people had to call in or come in and pay to show up for an event, and they just weren't there. So I think we had like 8 or 10 people who were going to be there, and no one came. As I recall, there was actually nothing happening in the store, and I think it turned out there was an event in the area which was preventing people from getting to us, and we redid the class later. But at the time, it was just the three of us, Claudia, Cheryl, and myself, and they asked me if they could demonstrate the Reiki to me, and I said, well, what do you need me to do? And they said, nothing. You can continue to do whatever it is that you're doing, which was, I think I was probably polishing jewelry that was in our display cabinet at the register. And they proceeded to pull out surrogates. Surrogates in Reiki are the little dolls that people might use, or some sort of anchor which acts as a surrogate for the person at which they're touching. And they explained to me that they had to actually use those because in Newark, California, at least at the time, you couldn't lay hands on people because there was an old palmistry law which required you to have an additional license specific to this city, which at the time was quite expensive per year to have, and so they were going to use the surrogates to demonstrate the Reiki. I'm getting somewhere. So the long story short is I had a tremendous experience during that Reiki that was happening. The two women giving me Reiki, I could feel where the energy was going. And not only that, they knew where I could feel that the energy was going. And they're like, do you feel it here, here, and here? And I was like, well, yes, I do. And they were like, you're trying to do it with us. Would you like to learn? And I said yes. So that began my Reiki journey. And I had done other energy work experiences and facilitated healing for other people. I was actually kind of good at it. So it just was like a natural progression. I was like, sure, yeah, I'll take this. I seem to be, you know, activating in this, and I'll do it. So I learned the Reiki in 94, 95, of Reiki 2. I was immediately a practitioner. My Reiki masters were women of integrity and discipline who brought Reiki into places like Kaiser Oakland and St. Luke's Hospital in San Francisco, and they had the free AIDS clinic on Market Street during the AIDS crisis, and they were offering Reiki among other things. They had practitioners come in and offering other services at the time. They were women of great integrity and power and love, who set a high bar for me, which I appreciate. Something to strive for, that level of things. And so I started practicing immediately. As soon as I had skills, I was laying hands on people at the art gallery slash metaphysical center, which we called the Astral Hope Chest. Um, it was not the path I was choosing. I was not choosing to be a Reiki practitioner. I just did it because it was a curiosity, which had a lot of potency to me. Like it was something was happening while I did it. Over the course of my life, when I had any uncertainty about what it was I was going to do next, I would start with Reiki. And it wasn't like some big revelation. It was just like, well, I have this skill. This is a skill that I will always have. I could always lay hands on people. This is what I'll do. And over the years, this developed. Now, I didn't run out and immediately get some, Reiki mastership attunement. The way that I was trained is that this is not something that was taken lightly. You just no, you shouldn't just be a Reiki master. That this should be a choice, because it is about really representing Reiki in the world. You were representing the energy. You were representing the healing. You were a priest in a lot of ways. Priest, priestess, whatever resonated with you. But um, it wasn't taken lightly. It wasn't just like, and you have a Reiki attunement, and you have a Reiki attunement. Like it was very personal. It was a choice that shaped who you were in the world and the direction that you were going to go in your life. And I still offer Reiki mastership with that. Like I'll give an attunement, but like if someone really wants to train with me to be a Reiki master, it's about who are you in the world and what are you going to do with it and what does it mean and how is this really shaped for you? Um, in honor of my Reiki masters, I still do it in this way. And it means a lot to me because I personally made those choices. So it wasn't until 2002 that I got my Reiki mastership. That was after September 11th, living in New York City and moving back to Los Angeles. It was Peggy Gentoff, my Reiki master then, who was part of the Reiki Renegades in Los Angeles, California, that I got that attunement. So you can see, and then I've written a book and I've trained lots of people and I've trained Reiki masters and, I have training programs and, I'm set to write another book. And all of this happened because I followed where I felt the energy. I followed where I felt the fire. I followed where I felt the interest and intuition. And I always leaned back into that flame that had been given to me, which brought me to where I am now. And it was not the planned course. It was not the course of choice. You know what I mean? It wasn't like, I'm going to set out and do this thing. But all the while, it was there, this spiritual energy that was very healing for me in my life. What I've noticed has come up in the last month or two is that there's been a message to recognize that regardless of the events that have happened in the world, regardless of what's happened personally in our lives, there's a constancy. There's something that's continuing. It's that beat of the heart, that innate love that's in us, that's in nature, but also looking at those choices that we've made, that through the ups and downs, who's been there, right? Not just in our relationships, but also in like our choices and our spiritual relationships. What's been the unconscious push, pull, the wax, the wane? Who's been the moon in our lives, right? What's guided us in those places, to sort of really look at that, like to see what it is, because there's arithmetic there, right? There's an addition that's happened. There's things that have added up to something, and those are starting to reveal themselves. These just start to come out, right? Like these start to happen. If you're more spiritually minded with a dedicated practice and you're tracking these things in your life, you're being conscious of what you feel and the directions that you've gone, this is something that you might be more consciously aware of. But um, even if you're not, even if you're, and I'm not, it's not a judgment, like, oh, you should have done your practice, whatever. Um, but just to sort of look at what's added up for you, right? And what's been the constant. And even if we can't figure out what the constant's been, remember that your body has been the constant, the heartbeat has been the constant, and this is an innate love that's been beating in you at all times. And no matter what's happening, no matter what's going on in the world, this heartbeat is with you, right? And this is the drumbeat of the earth. This is the drumbeat of life. This is the drumbeat of love that's happening. And whether we want something and we don't get it, or we had plans or they fall apart because of events, whatever they may be, this is still there. This is really the heart of the magic. The heart of the magic is love. That's essentially my message this week. Tune into your heart, refocus on that light, look at what you've accomplished, focus on what has been built, who has been there, right? Focus on where you could go next based on that information. Like do a little intel on yourself. What does this mean? Who has been there? What's added up for me? How have I shown up for myself? What skills have been available to me? And what can I do with those things? Because things are rapidly changing and what we want may not materialize in the world, but we can always tune back into that magic, right? And what's the training and practices and ways in which you can engage it and focus on the positive of what those are and don't dwell on the negative of what could have been or what's wrong now or what's going to be wrong in the future because that kind of psychology isn't going to lead you to a place where it really serves you, getting you to the place of where you're going to be happy, right? We all deserve to be happy, and I don't mean that in a having stuff sort of sense, although there's not necessarily anything wrong with that. I mean that in the way in that you should have a fulfilled life. You should be happy in your body as who you are and celebrated for who you are, wherever you are, and have a satisfied life of your needs met and those things. And if that's not happening, it's not necessarily your fault. I would argue it's probably not your fault at all. System's not really built for it. Um, but tune into tune into the heart. Tune into what's possible. Remember hope. Focus on the kindness. Focus on the relationships that matter, the ones that showed up, the ones that are still there. And don't let the the rough edges get to you for too long, right? It's all a mind experience. The mind is much bigger than we think. It's the body, it's the world. It's not just this internal dialogue. It's an external experience. When we think of the mind as a mental construct and not as a heartbeat, as a loving experience, as a connective, you know, um, relationship experience, we lose the thread. When we find our hearts again, we come back to ourselves. And that's really my message for the week. What's guided you here, regardless of what's happened, right? And if all else fails, if you cannot come to an answer to that, place your hands on your chest and feel that heartbeat and just let everything else fall away and turn into that because that beat is life and that life is love and it's beating inside you. And that's really the message for this week. I have some tarot cards for you if you are on the Patreon, and those are written in detail for you. But for everyone watching, I would like to mention these things. You have the Nine of Swords, which is these are the things that are plaguing you in the night that wake you up, tossing and turning about what was unresolved or what has not yet been resolved or what could happen or all of the woes that plague the mind. And the reason that she in this card is experiencing that thought is because she hasn't engaged them in her day to day. And the mind, the dreaming mind, the sleeping self that awakens there is saying, hey, we didn't talk about this while you were awake, so let's talk about this while you're asleep, right? So pay attention to that, what comes up in the night, what comes up in meditation, what comes up while you're sleeping. Maybe put a little note on those, but what's the positive that you can do to help to resolve those? What's the next step that you can take that's practical or creative that might take you in the right direction for yourself? There are three things that I would like to talk about using the Bluebird Lenormand this week. And they are three cards. We're going to call them three inspirations. Um, and and just to sort of remember them, we have um, we have the book, which asks, what story are we telling ourselves this week? What's the narrative we're giving? Is it that Nine of Swords? Is it leading us towards hope? What are we writing to ourselves? This would also be an emphasis to spend some time writing. I don't mean typing. I mean writing. I mean put your hand on some paper and a pen or pencil or whatever it is that you do, or draw if you don't write, or scribble if you don't draw, or like be a Tyrell Henry and just draw like scribbles all over the place and just let yourself, whatever it is, to help to translate some of these things that are happening inside you. Just ask yourself, what's the tone of the narrative that you're telling yourself? This is really indicative of the type of experiencing that you're helping to write for yourself. Maybe rewrite that narrative. To really understand what that narrative is telling us, we have the lady. The lady is saying, like, there's an intuition here for us to pay attention to, and it's through our feelings that we might arrive at it. It is through an examination of what we feel, or what might be coming up for us, looking for those patterns in the unseen that, happened. Like, Scott's Reiki story. Like, he didn't plan for Reiki, but yet this happened, and look how far it is 31 years later where this is at. There's a narrative there. This intuitive side of ourselves is asking us to really look at it. And then the final card that we have, that's sort of the zenith in all of this, um, is is the house. This is sort of asking us, what's the structure that this has built for us now, and what are we going to build next? This is also a small mindfulness moment about planning. When I see this week in regards with everything that I've experienced in in the cycle of information that's been coming to me, I would say also plan a little bit. Like, how do you bank in your needs for the future? What might you do to start to plan those things? I mean, this could be like, where's your earthquake supply kit? Where's your emergency supplies? What's your backup plans? What's your plan for the future if things go south? Like, start to look at those things and how they might be important to you, in a way um, that helps you to write, your story for tomorrow in a good way, and not focus so much on the negatives. That not to focus. So this is an important card. I want to say this about this card. It's not to not focus on the negatives, right? That's not. I'm not saying like ignore those things, right? It's really, are we handling these thoughts as they come up, as a sourpuss, or are we handling them as a moment to re-examine and then choose to engage them, and in engaging them, open them up and see them in a different light as something creative or constructive, or as a matter of fact, this thing is now over, or whatever it is that we conclude for ourselves, so that we have forward movement with them. Is it healthy or is it unhealthy? Unhealthy is not looking at it and letting it wake us up every night, right? Healthy is really waking up to what it is that's bothering us and dealing with it in our present moment to say, okay, what is it that I can do, right? So how does this add up for you this week, right? What is it that you're building for tomorrow? What story are you writing? Where is your intuition leading you? What are your feelings saying? What tone is this driving for you in your life? And how are you engaging what's coming up now in preparation for tomorrow? What is it that has been there for you? What's been the constant? And if nothing else, remember your heart. I'm at the studio this week. At the start of the week, Monday, I'm super booked. I'm not available. Although I do have some openings on Tuesday, You can always find me online. You can subscribe to the Patreon. That is a great way to stay tuned to these sorts of things. Or send me a message. Tune into the people that matter to you. Find the sources where you get your guidance from. Maybe your astrologer or your whatever that you go to. A good therapist goes a long way. This is Scott. Blessed be, blessed be, blessed be. You can always find me at starandstonellc.com, patreon.com/Scott K. Smith, and I'm online everywhere under those names. Have a lovely week.